Everyone, welcome back to the Shiva and Alex show. All right, another episode of CFSI CyberFence webinars. This is webinar 5. In the words of Bon Jovi, we're halfway there. Um, so thanks for joining us so far. It always amazes me to see that, we literally have hundreds of certificates sent out already. I think it's like probably like six or 700 already. So it always kind of blows my mind to realize that, over 100 people register for each webinar, and over 100 people here to listen to Alex and I speak. That's that's something impressive. All right, so welcome back. This is webinar 5. We about to look at some interesting stuff about the dark web cybercrimes, upcoming AI threats in particular, because unregulated AI is actually a pretty big part of the underworld cybercrime nowadays, I should say. All right, so let's jump into it one time. All right, so again, as part of Cybersecurity Awareness Month 2025, Alex and I have decided to just run 9 free webinars, and you get 9 free certificates. This is webinar 5. So as usual, just a bit about CFSI. We do everything under the sun with cybersecurity, risk management, even MSSP services and stuff, regular stuff with patching and seeing about your network and stuff, right? But we specialize in vulnerability assessments, pen testing, DFIR, digital forensics, incident response, and dark web intel, threat intel, right? I still have, I think, September's stats to put out, but hopefully I'll get around to that sometime today or tomorrow. Right, and of course, CFSI is the only place that you could do certs like the Certified Ethical Hacker, the Computer Hacking Forensics Investigator, the Certified Chief Information Security Officer, and a bunch of other stuff. All right, CFSI is the only authorized training center for the EC Council in the entire Caribbean. All right, so if you're interested in any of our services, you can just head over to cfsi.co, our website, and you'll find the service catalog there for download. All right, so we wrote a couple books on it, both Alex and I. Alex might write another one next year. I'm sure he's very excited about that. So he's just shaking his head and joking, that's all. All right, so reach out to me on LinkedIn if you have any questions, if you just want to chat, if you need advice and stuff. It's always free. And here's the picture of the year with Alex and that big bright smile showing off his dentistry, his fine dentistry work there. All right, so Alex is the big shot across the Caribbean. I always say great things about Alex, but not his face. So we'll just pick up on that. Uh, Alex, I don't know if you're muted, but I'm not hearing you. I don't know. Oh, there you
I don't
go.
know.
You can. Yeah, I could hear you now.
We're not talking loud enough.
Oh, probably. All right, so today we have some interesting stuff for you all about what is the dark web, some marketplace trends, AI's roles in cybercrime, AI for phishing and deepfakes, and something new, which is malware automation. We hear a lot of good stuff about AI and what AI could do. I'm sure everyone uses AI, whether it be ChatGPT or Grok or Llama or Claude or Gemini, Copilot, whatever it is out there. I'm sure in some way most of us would have interacted with it or had it make our life a lot more convenient, maybe, right?
Or miserable in some cases.
Depending on how deep you go, and sometimes you're right, yeah, because a lot of times when I needed some really important stuff, or help with some important stuff,
Hmm
so much information was just wrong,
Yeah, nothing
and
was that AI hallucinating.
the hallucinations could just be terrible some days, and I've noticed that it usually happens anytime they roll out something new. um, at the beginning itself, which is kind of terrible. Just leave it in beta and let people test. But I'm not a billionaire running things, I'm just a low cybersecurity person in the scheme of things. All right.
Oh,
Just a little disclaimer. 5 minutes into the webinar, we do not recommend that you go onto the dark web or onto the forums that we'll be mentioning because a lot of times you could lose information, you could lose your identity, you could lose money as well because a lot of these forums you have to pay to gain access to it. It might not be the right forum. There are rug pulls, meaning that sometimes they might take your money and just disappear, which has happened previously, right? So apart from just not going on the dark web, leave it to the professionals. Again, I have my own machine with my own internet connection for the dark web. That is not connected to my network because I'm terrified of this stuff and very terrified of ransomware groups. Alrighty, so let's jump into it. What time with the dark web, right? So you have the dark web is not a very large place. It's actually a very small place because you have like maybe 8,000 active sites, but these onion sites, as we call them, they go down so very often and they pop back up randomly. It's not something that is a term that was coined recently, which is Googleable, right? It's not your Googleable internet where you could search for stuff just like that. I typically use a special version of Tor, which I get to run a lot faster than some other versions that I had before. You could use it on anything actually, but I again I really don't recommend that you all go on the dark web. If you have questions about it, reach out to Alex or I, please. We'll try and help you out and keep things you know uh, try to help you keep things safe, I should say, right? But these sites, these onion sites, they're not indexed by Google and stuff. It's not your regular, what you call your surface web. So the web that we are custom with and so on, this is your surface web where you could find pretty much any and everything that we look for and use on a daily basis. The links for the dark web in particular, they're really difficult to remember. They're called onion links. And sometimes they are really long characters that make absolutely no sense. Maybe like just the first few characters, like if CFSI wanted a dark web stuff, maybe the first part of the URL could be CFSI and you'll find a lot of long random characters. And then at the end of it, instead of .com, .net, you have .onion, right? So you have a lot of .onion links there. Um, so apart from it having approximately 8,000 or more active sites and 30,000 onion domains, it is 2 billion plus in illicit revenue, which is actually up from 2024. Alex, you want to just add anything there, or I think
If I remember correctly, statistically, if you want to compare the activities in the dark web and the illicit activities, if you compare it to GDP level between China and the US and all these things, I think they'll be the third largest GDP, if I remember correctly, after China and US, the amount of money that it generates,
wow.
both in donations, um, ransoms being paid, spam
Yeah.
emails, because I'm counting all these spam emails that people actually do submit money on and all of that. It equates to like the two largest GDP, I think.
And you made an interesting point there that a lot of that money comes from the ransomware payments and stuff, the ransom demands there.
Mhm.
Because it's not all bad, eh? You would have like about, I think, about 20% of it is actually used for activism. But the rest of it, I wouldn't say 20%, a lot more than that. I could tell you for certain at least 25% is used purely for cybercrime, stolen data, ransomware kits and stuff. Um, we did the killing ransomware on Wednesday, which is interesting because I had to do that from a parking lot and run it. But Alex, thank you for running the show. But we looked at the killing ransomware there, and you have so many credentials floating around on the dark web and dark web forums that this is where the ransomware groups actually thrive. So, in the first webinar that we had with the head of TTC CERT, which is Mr. Anish Bechu, he said that there was some 30,000 credentials floating around for the Caribbean, right? But I can actually tell you all for a fact that some of the hits that happened with ransomware in the Caribbean, a lot of it was those leaked credentials were partially responsible for those ransomware attacks. This is something that's actually confirmed, right? So it just goes to show, the kind of data that's available out there on the markets and stuff. I'll mention a group called Biden Cash, for example. It's a forum, sorry, not a group. Biden Cash was one of the top dark web markets, and it leaked millions and millions of credit card information for free. And this year, just this year alone, in 2025, just to lure some buyers and stuff. Um, and when you think about it, as millions upon millions, your credit card information could actually be out there. One of the interesting things is that law enforcement actually took down Biden Cash not too long ago, like just a couple of months ago, right? So, but the thing is, when one goes down, you have 10 coming up. So that's just the way it actually goes there. And the majority of cryptocurrency and payments that you find, it's usually between Bitcoin and Monero. Bitcoin, everyone might know about Bitcoin. Monero is one that's the lesser known. But in order to get Monero, you have to you can't buy it with cash. It has to be bought with crypto, I think mined or something like that. All right, so you have lots of things going on there, and this is where phishing and ransomware actually thrive because if you would like to carry out, not you, but if a ransomware threat actor would like to carry out some sort of phishing attack, the dark web and dark web forums are actually very useful um for getting there. Alex, you know about any dark web forums in particular that you want to mention, or just these usual?
No, I'm not gonna mention the names of them.
All right, I'm not even gonna go there, right? That's like we have our good friend Jonathan, who is always in what you call red rooms on the dark web, so
Yeah.
you find some interesting things. But again, I really do recommend that you all go there. You could a lot of damage could actually happen, and bad things could fall upon you. So we just try to keep it really simple and mention that please don't go on these things. Right? So just like how you have regular forums and you could join forums, like even Reddit, for example, is one of the largest forums you have on Earth, right? But you have a lot of smaller forums where people could join for specific purposes like 3D printing, drone flying, cybersecurity, anything at all. All right, so they have a lot of dark web forums. The main ones in particular, apart from Biden Cash, which was taken down, you have Exploit, you have XSS, and you have Ramp. Um, there's also one just called the Russian Marketplace. It's
Yeah.
not
Yeah, for
necessarily
sure.
Russian, but I found that the majority of credentials are available out there. You can find them on the Russian Marketplace. The problem with joining these is that a lot of times you need to pay in Bitcoin to join, and you have to wonder, is this the actual right forum that I'm joining? Will I get actual access to something inside of there? Will they just leave me on some forum for noobs and take my money and go? The answer is I have no idea because I have not paid to join these forums. All right, you can do your
What
research and see what's out there.
what a lot of people need to also recognize is that since the dark web is technically not governed, even the regular internet is technically not governed, we do have some entities that provide some level of compliance and control. Like for example, to register a domain on your regular internet, you have to go to a registered registrar, GoDaddy, host, whatever. The dark web, there is no one that actually regulates that. So you could have a site called the Russian Forum, and
Hmm.
it's slightly different, and no one could tell them, well, it's already registered or anything like that. There's no one suffering like that. And also remember, the onion links themselves, they may all start with a Russian forum, and it's just the last set of 25 characters is different, but you
Yeah.
don't know what the legitimate one is. So you would easily fall prey in these sites.
And not knowing what the legitimate one is a problem because if not if but when I tried to search for the legitimate Russian marketplace and so on, there were like hundreds of them available, and I did not think that they all look the same pretty much,
Mhm.
right? With the Russian language or variation of the Russian language. I don't know. Yes, they have translation there, but I just wasn't going to risk it in there. So anybody could have an onion link to represent your site on the dark web. Now there are legitimate sites, you could find Facebook and CNN and BBC and stuff because like I said, about 20% or 25% would be used by activists. So for example, in countries where certain websites are banned, right? Like the Great Firewall of that country and stuff that I don't want to mention. Um, you you have a lot of I guess freedom of information and press freedom is not that free across in those countries. So the way that they let people access the news and stuff is to simply just have these sites on the dark web so that it is a little tiny bit easier to access, but of course the getting onto the dark web and the tools for getting on the dark web, those will be heavily monitored in those countries as well. So it's not that the dark web will be used only for bad things. It is actually a good place to get information out there that others can't have access to by now. So this exploit and ramp and XSS forums, those are the most popular that you have out there. They trade everything from millions of stolen credit cards to ransomware kits, even groups like Killin, for example, that we spoke about on Wednesday. They are heavily active on these types of groups, and that's how they recruit members. That's how affiliates would try to get recruited by some of these groups as well. Right? So, for example, take Exploit. Exploit always sells firewall exploits that are used in international attacks and also some Caribbean attacks. I don't want to go too much into detail and call the names of countries and companies and vendors and stuff, but these are the kind of things that they do. If there's an exploit that you read about on sites like Bleeping Computer and you register and stuff, you guarantee that you could find them on these forums. But sometimes even some of these forums to get access to them, you could only get in if you have a referral code from another member who is very active. So they're very tight-lipped and secretive for obvious reasons, you know. So, um, with law enforcement always bringing down, like I said, Biden Cash was brought down as well, right? So you have one like Abacus and Biden Cash, and they drive 2 billion US in illicit trade, and this is also amplified by AI and unregulated AI, which is why I wanted us to talk about AI, right? Because with all the good things that we know about AI unrestricted, it literally, as I put there, turns the dark web into um, a cybercrime factory, I would say. Right. So this is what I was talking about with where they took down um Biden Cash. Poor Biden. But you can just go to that website, securityaffairs.com, and just search for Biden Cash, and you can read the whole article. Now look at it. It's just June 5th, 2025. That is not too long ago. That's just a few months ago. Wow, we almost midway
That's
into
right there.
October. We're almost at the end of
Mhm.
October. Jeez, ages.
That's right there.
Um, yeah, 2026 gonna reach us now. Yeah, Alex, before I jump into this, you want to add anything here one time or
The dark web primer. Yeah. So one thing people didn't mention, but it's also interesting to know just some bit of the history of it, is that the reason they call it onion is that because onion has many layers attached to it. And that is how they came up with the name. They're going to use that concept to keep the dark web kind of secretive, where they add all these layers to get access to it. Because if you don't know how it works, is that your connection across many different nodes before it actually gets to the dark web. And the funny thing about the dark web is you don't know who's in control of those nodes. So this is one of the reasons why we talk about careful going on. If you do go onto it, be careful going onto it. Otherwise, just don't go. But you never know who is listening to what you are doing while you are doing it. That's one thing I wanted to add to everything so far.
I'm not gonna say anything on that. But yeah, is we could only repeat, right? What we
Yeah.
constantly say about be very careful, try not to go on the dark web, right? Leave the research to us. If you all have an idea for the dark web and you want us to host a webinar, sure, reach out to us and we'll try and throw something together. I'll really try to make sure that we have more things going on for 2026. We want to actually do even a physical conference, right? We have a lot of conferences going on cybersecurity and stuff where they talk about some great things, but I don't really actually see the demo side of it. Like when I think about a cybersecurity conference, I'm thinking about like DEF CON, Black Hats, and these kind of things, you know. So we probably want to look at something for October next year, maybe have something physical in place for entire Caribbean. We have talent, so even if we want to do demos and show you all stuff, I don't want to do a conference where people just sit and talk. No offense to the conferences where people sit and talk, but we're very much more practical into it because this is what we do. We do this for a living, you know, with dark web, intel, pen testing, forensics, risk management. So I think it might be a good idea to showcase what we have out here, showcase the talent, and introduce everybody to some more hardcore stuff in cyber, and try and carry the Caribbean a little bit up a notch or two, right? And you will. So back to these marketplaces. The second one, Biden Cash. Well, we saw that this was kind of out the door for now until they rebrand into something else. But if you look at those things there with some of the things that are sold, right? Well, Abacus, for example, that's drugs. Actually, a lot of people don't realize that any, I mean, it'll be very difficult to sell outside of the larger continents and countries, but in the US and the UK and those places have larger land masses, you can get drugs and guns and hitmen for hire and stuff. What y'all could do too is take a Google search for Silk Road, right? And see
Ooh,
the story behind Silk Road and who it was, the Dread pirate robots and stuff, and see how what took place and how they got taken down and who went to jail. I think sometime this year or last year, did they say that? I think somebody was pardoned for it, or I can't remember.
I remember it had reappeared, it had resurfaced for some
Yeah.
time, but we weren't sure who was running it, if it was the original guy or if some other people was doing it. It's the same thing that happened with Pirate Bay.
Yeah.
So no one knew for sure who was running Pirate Bay when it picked back up, if it was the original or if it was, the FBI or NSA. So and it's still there as far as I remember.
Everything is still there, it's still there. But I
Yeah,
need to for sure, that has to be some sort of law enforcement monitoring it because of what took place. You had all of these things that was listed here on Silk Road. So Silk Road, I think I first heard about Silk Road way back in 2011 or something like that.
yeah, it's had a
Um, yeah, the dark web has been around for a long time, a very long time, right? Google and stuff, the search engines, they do a pretty good job at indexing. But then you have all of these stuff, all of these sites here that, there's no one to regulate, no one to register with, as Alex said. So people just do what they want and sell what they want on the dark web. One thing that I've been noticing on the Russian market in particular, the Stila logs, right?
mhm,
So Alex as well spoke at length about Stila logs and how affiliates, instead of having to hack and break in organizations, you just go on the dark web, you look for Stila logs for various companies, and you buy those Stila logs, which could be anywhere from 100 US to tens of thousands of US dollars there. But think about it, it's much easier to use compromised credentials and to actually go ahead and try and hack firewalls and IDS and IPS and honeypots and all the robust infrastructure that we put up there, where instead you have a key, you unlock the gate, and you walk right in.
walking. Yep.
So some scary stuff. And the third one there, Alex again spoke about this at length, which was RDP, right? Remote desktop protocol there. Please, if you all have RDP and remote access, please make sure that this is thoroughly monitored and well protected. If you don't need it, please disable it, I should say. All right. And look at the price that you have on sticks there. Anywhere from $10 to $500,
$500.
right? And sure, as we say, that's real piper price. So compared to the of thousands of tens of thousands of dollars, yeah, that you might get on the others there, right? But the trend now is to go invite only, and this is because you have the markets like Biden Cash, right, which was seized by law enforcement. So the very active underground dangerous forums, they in particular now would just go by invite only. So they might even ask you to prove who you are based on other forums, or if you have proof that you were XYZ whoever on this forum previously, on Biden Cash, for example, prove it. So there's a lot of validation techniques that would have to go down. They're not just going to say, okay, well, I know Alex, so let me in. That'd be nice, but no, it doesn't work
No
like that.
entry.
Stolen data and credentials. This is what it is all about. You have 15 billion plus compromised credentials available, which is up 300% since almost 10 years ago. And like we saw, the basic logins are anywhere from 10 to 50 US, all the way up to 200 thousand. I made a mistake with that 200. Sorry, yeah. Sorry, 200 to 2000 US inside of there. But there have been instances where, depending on the type of exploit, yes, it might start from 100,000, but it goes up to quarter million and half a million. And I've even seen this posted by some ransomware groups and threat actors and stuff where they sell um, threats for, I almost called the name, for certain vendors out there because these vendors are very popular um, worldwide, right? So sometimes they might start off at 500,000 and then lower the price if they think that, groups and others not purchasing it. But you have a lot of ransomware groups in particular. They know the value of these exploits. So if they might probably ask for a proof of concept even, and if it works, they will definitely fork out that much for these exploits on the dark web. So this PII that you keep seeing there, for those of you all that are not familiar, PII is just personally identifiable information. In Trinidad and the Caribbean, we've had several significant breaches, at least four that I can think of, where it affected the entire Caribbean, and a lot of us, our information is out there. All right, and this happened, I would say, over the last 5 years, more so within the last three, but some of them go way back to about 5 years. Alex, you jump in now and talk about some of that data out there and how it could affect us.
So yes, I was going to say the kind of data that you see being leaked is insane, because you have things like people's full names, their addresses, telephone numbers, and and you may be like, well, that's not too bad. But then in some instances, you have piece of IDs, like passport information, ID card information. Uh, Granted, in the Caribbean region, I always say this that it's a blessing and a curse for us in the Caribbean region that we don't have certain technologies in place. Why is that? It's a curse in that a lot of conveniences that a lot of bigger countries have, we don't get. For example, like you can apply for certain things online without even having to show up, unless you need to go and collect like a card or something, like a bank card or something. But for us here in the Caribbean, certain things you still need to go in and have to do in person. So that's the curse. The blessing is that because that information is not digitized, there's no way if a breach occurs that our data is going to get out there because there's nothing to take from it because of our lack of these technologies. So that's the blessing component. But when it does happen, like what happened in what it was 3 years ago in Trinidad, where it was people's first names, their full name, sorry, ID card information, passport information, telephone numbers, billing address, living address, and some of the passports, some of the identification documents included also driver's permits and in clear pictures. So it is not very difficult for people to replicate these IDs and make fake versions of
Hmm.
them and conduct transactions as you. Just today, I was reading an article where someone was able to create a passport using AI and was able to bypass the KYC controls in Europe. Europe has some of the strongest controls for protecting PII, and the AI was able to generate a fake passport that was successful in bypassing those checks. So you can imagine, based on what data is available out there, with combined with the AI technologies, how dangerous things are. And with the volume of breaches that are occurring, it's easier now for attackers to cross-reference and cross-relate breaches. So while a breach may occur for, like, let's say, an ISP, and another breach occurs for like an insurance firm, most times people use the same email addresses to receive the information from them. So it's easy for attackers now to build a full profile
Hmm.
on you. They could know exactly where you live in, know your insurance provider, know your telephone provider, have your telephone number. They basically, it's easier for them to become you, with these kinds of leaks and the kind of data that's out there because of. Thankfully, we don't
And
have patient data out there
yet,
yet.
so to add to that with the KYC, right? That's you know your customer and stuff. You actually have some online banks um, and other financial platforms where you don't have to go into them physically because some of them might not have a physical presence, but they will ask you to send in this type of data. And that's what Alex was talking about there. Because with this data, you could try to actually regenerate documents. And in some cases, there are documents already out there for some of us, right? I've seen things like driver's permits and national ID cards and passports, the biodata forms and stuff. So that together with even some other documents, they have things like utility bills out there with your name and address on it. So these are things that you can submit to for this process, the KYC, know your customer, to any organization, not just a financial institution. But understand from that point now the damage that could be done. And all of this is also available for sale. I've also, even for us home here in Trinidad, I know we have a global audience right now, but for almost any country that I've checked, you have this type of information out there for sale. And as we on the topic of selling here, right, with Biden Cash, there was actually a case where a threat actor bought a login credential for 50 US, $50 from Biden Cash, and that actually led to a huge breach in a healthcare organization, right? And that exposed a further 10,000 patient records, right? So just to let you all know about the type of damage that could be done out there, right? Even something like if you want to buy VPN access, um, stuff like that. The patient records are usually the most damaging because you tend to not just have address about someone, but it goes way personal into their actual, physical and biological, mental, that all of these things could actually be used against them in some very terrible ways. All right. And the issue that we have now is that you have AI coming into the mix because AI now could bundle all of these social media data together with this data that you have there to make phishing campaigns and stuff for threats and ransom demands way more dangerous than what it would have been previously. All right. So I think there was a phishing attack with exactly what I just described there, where credentials were bought, but they use AI to scrape credentials and not credentials, but social media data in particular. And the breach was something close to about a couple $1 million, but from statistics worldwide, they think that this could actually be close to about 3 billion in damages right now. Right, so this is why I decided to put together this webinar to show you all how, working with even legitimate AI, right? It could be used for purposes that are a bit nefarious or something like that if you want to go in that direction. All right, so the cybercrime services and the tools, you get everything out there. Now, the thing is, if you head onto the dark web to buy malware, the thing is, there's nothing that would say you yourself not going to get infected with malware, right? How do you know what you're buying? You might say, okay, well, someone has an info sealer, such as the first one, which is Redline or Vida, Raccoon. You have a bunch of them out there. Um,
The names that kill me.
they had some more that I can't even mention in public, but they get really randomly creative with these names sometimes. Redline went down a bit. I think it was taken down by law enforcement earlier this year. I remember, and the thing is, you don't even have to go on the dark web alone. There are other tools that we use on a regular where you can find these things and groups, but I don't want to get into that because I don't want you all to get into trouble, right? So just like how we have cloud as a service, software as a service, now we have malware as a service, which at the end of the first point there you'll see as mass. So in Trinidad, we say we make it mass. That's pretty much what it is. So whatever you need, if you want a whole phishing kit out there that's as close to undetectable, um, if it is undetectable, they call it FUD, F-U-D, which is for fully undetectable. They have lots of these things out there, but you're never sure of what you're actually getting out there. Because even for Redline as well, I never saw it for as low as 50. I always saw it for 100 US and up. But for the even for the $50, you could actually get a full ransomware kit. So, for example, I'm coming across a lot of instances where people contact me and they may send information about they were hit with ransomware and try to send me the type of file extension, and some of these I've never even seen before. So you have affiliates that are using sometimes customizable versions of ransomware kits that they purchase from the dark web and stuff. A good ransomware kit, I shouldn't say a good ransomware kit, but one that could do a lot of damage. That's what I mean in terms of function and operational um, functionality and stuff. It would start from 5,000 US, right? So look at the type of dangers we're talking about there for that price, where people will buy something from anywhere from $50 to $5,000, but then be able to cause damage in the millions or ask for ransoms and from quarter million into 2, 3 million, something like that. So cybercrime is I would say is probably like about 60% of the dark web market activity at this point in time. And it's actually outpacing drugs. Drugs used to be the place, sorry, the dark web used to be the place that you go for drugs online before, right? But cyber is definitely up by at least 60% as we have it there. Um, a phishing kit from Styx, the Styx market in particular, that cost $100 was actually used to target Caribbean victims. So I'm not going to go into the details of it because I don't want to bring out the victims and or bash anybody like that. But the ransomware demanded was nothing under $200,000. I don't know if the ransom was actually paid or anything like that, but it just goes to show the dangers. And monitoring the dark web is not something easy because even if you want to purchase tools to monitor the dark web, I think a good one starts from like about 9 or 10,000 US. A great one starts from 25,000 US and up. So that as well poses, a very serious threat. Alex, you want to add and jump in anything here one time?
I was going to say the phishing kits it is amazing to see because some of these kits are extremely simple by design. Like you look at it, it's just basically a custom web server, admin portal, the phishing page. If anybody has ever used like one of the common ones that we would use in pen testing, which is something called GoFish, some of them replicate those basic designs where it's a custom admin portal. We just upload the target's name, then you click send, and it handles everything for you. And some of them get really complicated because they build the custom malware as well that is embedded into somebody's email. Or in some cases, these phishing kits also generate the malicious media. It doesn't necessarily have to go into an email, but it could be embedded into like picture files, dropped
Hmm.
onto flash drives. But this is how some of the when you get insider threats, this is how some of it works. They would just generate that media and send to the insider threats to deploy, as opposed to just sending the phishing email. But it's all one kit, just one kit that handles all of this craziness. And it ties into the next point that Shiva will talk about, which is the exploit kits themselves with the 0 days, because the combination of the two is insane. When you have a phishing kit that deploys, that works against, that has, sorry, that deploys a malware that works against a 0 day that no one knows how to fix or even know that exists, it's even 10 times or even probably 100 times more dangerous than just using these strict phishing kits
Hmm.
themselves. And then you combine, well, the AI. Well, the AI is a totally different game when it starts implementing these things because you now have malware that is driven by AI that can do the analysis of communication far quicker than if you as a person had to do to then customize further to launch the particular ransomware. Now, in the particular targets themselves.
And adding to that too, with the AI in particular, because if you just go back to what I said a couple seconds ago, where for this year somebody bought a $100 phishing kit, right? And it was so effective that they were able to call a ransom for about 200,000 US as far as that goes. But where it goes back to AI is that you have what you call an AI scraper, right? So the new AI scrapers, which would scrape social media or the entire internet if you wanted to, um, they start at 200,000 US on the dark web, right? If you were to purchase a 0 day exploit as well, which has been done by several threat actors out there, 0 day exploits start from again 200,000 US and up, right? So it is really out of reach for most of us, but of course you have these groups that bring in these types of ransoms when this type of money when ransoms are paid to them. They would probably gladly shell out some of this information if they knew, for example, there is one going on right now. Every year you'll find that a company that is very popular, they will be breached, and you have exploits for this being used by all of the top ransomware groups. I don't know if they work together. I don't know who they buy it from, where they buy it from, but um, you have a lot of dangerous stuff. Last year, Play was hitting something like 50 to 100 companies per day based on an exploit for one piece of software that's very popular. This year, it's the same thing too with another very popular piece of software. I think Killing and Ink Ransom and some of the big names, they are leveraging that as well. Right? So these groups, they are very dangerous. Law enforcement does work pretty hard, I would say, at trying to bring these down because these markets, they usually don't last more than 7 months. Like I have any last line there, right? So within 7 to 8 months, they would just either be taken down or they would come down and rebrand and start into something new. And something that sometimes for them, that's a good way to cull the non-active users, and they could take their best users and whoever they would have maybe formed a bigger alliance with, and they could form something else. Ransomware groups might pop up. I've seen like at least 10 new ransomware groups pop up every single month for the beginning of the year, at least 10, right? So it is a big threat, I would say. And when you couple that with ransomware too, is getting pretty sticky out there. So with the marketplaces, why I tell you all to be very careful is because you have a lot of exit scams, right? And of course, law enforcement will always set up their sting operations there, which is expected, right? But if you think to even pay to get something or buy access to something or see information, um, more than likely you're going to get scammed. But so far, there are a lot of crypto tumblers that I've seen for sale as well. A crypto tumbler is where, let's say that Lockbit attacks a company and asks for $2 million in Bitcoin, right? Just like how, when we use cash and stuff, we have serial numbers on cash and stuff. It is a bit difficult. It is very difficult, I should say, but certain types of crypto like Bitcoin and stuff, it may be, sometimes possible to trace it back to not necessarily the owner, but at least a wallet that was used. So a crypto tumbler is where you mix it up with, they have organizations that actually mix up the crypto so that if you want like 100,000 in crypto, you pay them a certain fee and they give you back or they sell to you 100,000 in tumbled crypto or something like that. So a lot of crypto tumblers are starting to pop up, and as they pop up, they are taken down by law enforcement. But if someone wanted to hide funds with Bitcoin or something like that in particular, this is where they use tumblers to actually hide the
Understand.
funds. And sometimes it could actually swing the price of Bitcoin depending on what was used. I don't have any too much information on that, but that's just what I've read and seen with threat actors and so on. So that side that I talk about, Abacus previously, Abacus isn't there anymore. Genesis, Abacus, Biden Cash, um, Abacus went down this year as well because I think law enforcement carried out some sting operation and they were able to bring it down. But I don't know if they actually brought down the site itself, but the vendors, some of the vendors that were selling on Abacus, they caught about, I can't remember, it was 10 to 20, a couple of them. But I mean, you never know if that were the sale of drugs or guns or something, it could have very well saved lives, right? So just to let you all know about what actually happens there. So now you want to go a little bit deeper into it with AI for phishing, deepfakes, malware automation. Alex Sam is the king of phishing campaigns in the Caribbean, legitimate phishing campaigns, mind you, right? I use Alex and his company, Theater and Technologies, for all of my phishing assessments that I do with CFSI as well. He is very creative when it comes to not just phishing, but spear phishing and whale phishing campaigns. So if you all have phishing campaigns that you want to conduct as well, you could also reach out to Alex or reach out to me and I'll put you on to Alex. All right, I'm not going to take anything for putting you on to Alex. Um, let me just change the slide here. Right. As I was explaining, you have the dark web and the surface web. The dark web is what we're talking about today. The surface web is what you would go open up Chrome and Google and Safari and DuckDuckGo, all these cool browsers and search engines where we have regular access to, and you know about websites like Google.com, CFSI.co. It's easy to just find it there, right? But the dark web, we do not have this type of indexing. There are some search engines for the dark web, but they're a little iffy. Just to check over the chat a little quickly, there's a guy, Mr. Dover, inside of there, who is talking about malware and cloud and stuff, and he had some questions to ask if I've ever bought anything from there, and to which I would say no, I've never bought anything from the dark web. Um, there's another question by Darren. Oh, Darren has a good question here. Are there any whitelisted websites that you can do queries for your personal or financial information exposed on the dark web? Even if you use the regular sites like Have I Been Pwned, which is one of the biggest, they do carry a lot of information as close as you could get to what might be seen for the dark web. I think they have one of the biggest repositories and databases of information that is out there. At this point, I would say it's safe to assume that there is information about you on the dark web because of and if we even look at the Caribbean, because like I said, because of the amount of breaches where we've had so many gigabytes, probably into the hundreds of gigabytes by now. Um, actually, yeah, it is the hundreds of gigabytes based on if I remember correctly. Um, it very well might be out there, right? But check out Have I Been Pwned? Spelled Have I Been, and Pwned is Pwned. Oh, is it Pwnd? Pwned.
And ED.
Ed. Okay,
Yeah,
Pwned.
ED.
Right? Check it out, and that will give you as close a match as possible onto the dark web. Other than that, I think WatchGuard, if you head over to watchguard.com, I think they do have some a section there where you could check for free and see if your information is actually on the dark web. The thing is, sometimes you have directories of people that legitimate stuff, right? Like for example, I think way back a couple years ago, I saw the entire voter registry for Trinidad and Tobago online, and you could search for anybody
Right.
inside of there. So all this is regular information. And it doesn't necessarily have to be stolen, but you have legitimate information that would be across on the dark web as well, because people will just be saying, we have a million entries here for Trinidad and Tobago. Would you like to buy it from us? Remember, you don't know what you're purchasing there, and maybe someone might be like, who's not from here, might say, okay, well, this is information that's easy to find. But this is where you have the scrapers out there, the AI scrapers that are coming into play. And the AI scrapers, um they will be doing a lot of damage because they are the ones that will be able to go and skim through every single website on Google that has been indexed and also do analytics on that and start their own database and repositories and building profiles and stuff. So we're reaching a dangerous place there. All right. So to continue with what I'm saying here, so you have something on the dark web called Fraud GPT and Worm GPT. These are specifically for phishing malware code. You could actually ask it to help you build stuff there. Whereas on the surface web, we have ChatGPT and Grok and all these things there. But these are regulated. So on the dark web, no ethical limits, unregulated. Um, Dark web AI sold as different services, anywhere from $50 to $1,000. There's a monthly subscription, just like ChatGPT has their, I think it's what, 20 or 25 a month. You could pay anywhere from 10 to 200. Some of them are more depending on what services you want. But the scary part about it with the capabilities is that it could generate polymorphic malware. Polymorphic malware means that something, for example, like a rootkit, if your antivirus happens to detect that there's a rootkit that starts up when your machine starts up, it'll try to wipe it. But when your machine starts up again, it could change into something else, morph into something else, get deleted, but it's still there. A piece of it will change, morph. You know, it's a
Insane.
never-ending cycle. Yeah, a rootkit is something that you might actually want to consider throwing away your entire system if you're infected with
Possible.
a rootkit. Um, and even though we're talking about malware and stuff, those websites tell you everything. If you even want to generate drugs or make blueprints for printing stuff that we shouldn't be printing, for example, all of these things are out there on the dark web. So that's what I mean by it's unregulated. There's zero ethics about it there that you have, right? So everything is unregulated. Whereas the surface web, you have groups that regulate us and watch us and monitor us and stuff. Even YouTube, when I'm trying to upload these videos at the end of the webinars and stuff, I have a bunch of stuff to check off and make sure it's appropriate for the public and it's not made for kids or as the case may be. All right, so with the Alex, you want to take this one since you I know you're pretty good with the phishing and stuff.
So with the AIs that they introduced into the dark web, like the Worm GPT, the Fraud GPT, there was I think two or three more others out there, but they're all spin-offs of the Fraud GPT and Worm GPT. Is that it makes the execution, like I was mentioning from before, the execution of these attacks a lot different in terms that it makes the ability to automate these things a lot quicker. The current systems that we use without AI was not bad. It was pretty good already. Now with AI, you automate this thing significantly faster because now you don't have to worry about drafting that phishing email. AI could now draft the phishing email for you, know exactly who it should go to mimic the writing style of some of the people that is going to be coming from. One of the things that we when we do investigations and somebody's a victim of phishing, one of the things that we check for is one of the things we tell people to check for, sorry, to identify phishing emails is the language used in the phishing email. For example, is it written in such a way that it reflects the culture of where it's coming from? Is it even written in English? And these little things. Now, because of AI, that's something that the attackers don't need to worry about. The AIs will understand, hey, this is being written in Trinidad, and it will understand that Trinidad has its own lingo, right? According
Hmm.
to it.
Hmm. Hmm.
It uses that. So you don't even have to worry about the language barrier anymore. So it also makes it easier to scale because now you can target anyone in Trinidad because the AI completely understands how the language works in Trinidad. It understands the writing style in Trinidad. And because of that, they could iterate quicker over successful campaigns and be like, oh, this campaign was successful for these reasons. And use the same AI bot to basically review that. And the next campaign going forward, you see lessons learned from that and automatically do it. You don't need to worry about figuring out why it was successful. AI handles that for you, right? On top of that, because the AI can allow for such ease of development, reduces that area of entry. Where, like in the old days of hacking, we had the term called security, where someone would just take a program and run it, and they don't need to understand how it works. The same thing applies now to the malware and the phishing campaigns, in that the AI reduces that barrier so that no one really needs to understand what the malware is going to do from a technical perspective. They just need to know that once the malware runs, it encrypts whatever, it gives you a backdoor, and you can take whatever you need. So there's no need for them to understand that technicality behind writing malware. And then lastly, like I mentioned from earlier, with the introduction of the AI into malware, they could attach mini AI agents to the malware so that when they do infect the system, they can scan, identify if you have some sort of endpoint protection on the machine or on the network, and then morph itself to bypass those controls that you have. Or even in some instances, and I've seen this recently, where they, as their own EDR, they disable the locally installed one, becomes its own, so your system nearly never raises a flag that, hey, there's malware in the system, because the malware is the endpoint protection that's being run at the moment, right? So that's one of the more, I mean, that's a very intense one, and it's not a very common one, but it is happening. It is there. And then, well, deepfakes, deepfakes are one of the most interesting ones when it comes to AI. Because there was a story, was it this year or last year? One of it was last year, with the CEO or the CFO in Hong Kong, where
That was this year.
was there was this year,
That
the
was this year.
executive assistant, yeah, the executive assistant jumped on a Zoom, a team call, sorry, a Teams call with cameras on, and was talking to the CFO
Hmm.
and approved the sign up of a 25 or $35 million transfer, basically. Whichever. It's above 20 million effectively. Transfer and authorized it to occur. And the person, you couldn't tell that it wasn't the CFO because it looked exactly like the CFO and it sounded exactly like the CFO. And that's what it is. So imagine if you can physically determine if someone is genuine. Imagine something like multi-factor authentication. that uses facial recognition to do it. It is
True.
not difficult to bypass, and there have been for concepts done by other pen testers where they do use the facial recognition software to and they use the AI generated deepfakes to bypass. And like iPhones are popular for using the facial recognition. They have bypassed it using those MFA tools,
Hmm.
using those deepfake tools. Sorry.
And with these deepfake tools, it's basically just two of them that are mainly used. One is Fraud GPT and the other is Worm GPT because I think fraud GPTs are available on the Russian market in particular. And this is where you write scams and malware in minutes. So with CAS or Cybercrime as a service, so we have software as a service, we have CAS, CAAS, Cybercrime as a service. This is where the majority of the money on the dark web is actually going to, and it's actually attracting a lot more people. So that $2 billion plus, that should probably double in the next year or so. Because imagine for $50, you could have a professional level attack with AI speed that is 40 times faster with polymorphic code. That's a nightmare for defenses. And the UN in 2025 they flagged a campaign from Fraud GPT, which was scripted in like just a couple hours or something. So I think imagine they pay 50 US to access Fraud GPT, and it was used to do business email compromise, which is BEC, right? At a cost of $1 million in just a couple hours. It was that fast, and the typos they're not there anymore. You know, a big part of a cybersecurity awareness is tell people, well, look out for the typos, look out for the spelling, totally gone inside of there. So, and for like a phishing kit that costs anywhere from 20 to $100, that will send thousands of emails instantly with Worm GPT, right? And Worm GPT also handles it in every single language that you could think about. And the problem why you have the deepfakes being a issue here too is that sometimes, well, you might look for certain things and features, and sometimes one eyebrow might look out of sync with the other eyebrow, some weird facial feature. But when you do that over a chat, a group chat, sometimes you have a little bit of lag, so you might expect that, you have a little buffer here or there, whatever. And again, with Fraud GPT and Worm GPT, this is like a subscription, sometimes about 100 US, 200 US, and you get all of these things done in an instant. All right. So with the AI, as you can see here, AI has a very big role in cybercrime, right? Because apart from in 2025 surge, which is where you have an 82.6% increase in phishing, $37 billion stolen in deepfakes in Southeast Asia alone. $37 billion because of deepfakes. And these are things that you don't really hear too much out there, but even locally, especially on Facebook, my mom was showing me her phone and she's constantly asking me, is this real? Is this real? Is this real? Because there are a whole lot of videos with MPs and public figures and stuff saying, invest in this, invest in that, you'll get back returns. But she knows, I'm proud of my mom. She knows that, it's a fake that she should probably come and be like, should I block this? Should I block this? And I'd be like, yes, well done, mommy. All right, so yeah, the Fraud GPT and Worm GPT, these large language models, the thing is anybody could actually put together their own LLM. Johnny, I forget the name of what Johnny used. I think it's all GPT or something like that that Johnny was using, where you could combine chat and this one and the other there. So it could be used for good, but you'll see the other side of it as well, which you don't really see, right? The dark web integration, it's sold as cybercrime as a service, which would lower the barriers. So you don't have to be a programmer, top-notch programmer or developer anymore. Anyone could start doing this. And this is why I wanted to have this webinar after we do so many with the ransomware and affiliates and stuff. Because imagine someone wants, a threat actor wants to become a ransomware developer or launch their own type of ransomware. Remember, I was telling you all that I'm seeing a lot more ransomware attacks where the extensions um, that I know about for certain ransomware groups. I have no clue about a lot of these new ones coming out here. So I'm not saying that they will, but I am leaning towards the this picture here, where I'm saying that it could be that AI is helping them out, tremendously, because it could be anyone with any level once you have a natural curiosity and a little bit of, you want to tinker and stuff. So it's getting to be a very, very dangerous place. Again, this is why you have law enforcement monitoring or trying to monitor sites on the dark web and all these things tremendously um, as the time goes by. Because that last line that I have there, right, that scales attack 40 times faster and they evade antivirus and EDR and XDR and everything. Some of them, there's one called GhostNet. GhostNet sells on the dark web for anywhere between 100 to 1,000 US. It uses AI to create the polymorphic malware code that we're talking about, but it keeps mutating to dodge antivirus, and the evasion rate is 99% to dodge antivirus. And it's not just used in ordinary attacks, it's mainly used, I would say, for IoT, Internet of Things, and critical infrastructure. So critical infrastructure with lights, utilities, oil and gas, whatever you might think about water, you can understand how, you know, dangerous this stuff actually is. Because GhostNet actually hit a utility company in 2025 and it bypassed all of their protection, all their firewalls, everything, and they locked up all the systems in a couple days because the AI integration that was used, it made it absolutely invisible. All right, so yeah, Alex, you could run through this again too.
And so, as mentioned from before, usually how it works is that they would use the AI to craft these emails, and they get the tone down, the language style down, the writing style down, and all because they are fed the data that it's trained on data that belongs to the target. So because of that, the context becomes a lot better. The writing becomes a lot better. It becomes significantly more convincing. Before it was already convincing. Now it's like you definitely are talking to the original person most of the time. I mean that's just shows it there, but how quickly they're able to iterate over this, because you're looking at 1,200% spike in Q1 alone. We're not talking for the rest of the year. Just the first quarter of 2025, you're looking at an increase of 1265%. That's how quickly the iteration occurs, right? Yeah. And the kits, I mean, the pricing of the kits are insane, are insane. I mean, $20, honestly, for a clip. I mean, granted, you could probably use the same AI to write your own clip, just saying,
Hmm.
but why would you do that when you have the kits already pre-built and they're tried and tested and continuously being, it's like, yeah, some using Microsoft Word and Excel and you would continue using it because it's tried, it's tested, you know how to use it, and you know it's being developed on. It's the same thing with these kits. It's tried, it's tested, and it has developers that sit behind it day in, day out, constantly building out on it. And then from there you go on to the deep fakes themselves. And the voice, the video, and the social engineering, it's a come behind it. And I mean, the story with the Hong Kong CEO, CFO is one of the best stories that just reflects that alone. It's a video, and then particularly Southeast Asia. I don't know what's going on in Southeast Asia, but there are a lot of these what is it? What they call it? The romance scams,
Yeah.
where you use the same tactics, the voice and the video, and the social engineer both men and women into thinking that yeah, this is the love of their life and things like that. And they start sending money and spending money behind these things. I mean, what we're looking at because of these deep fakes and stuff like that. It's a $25 million fraud case. That's the same one we were talking about. 25 millions. It's insane with the deepfakes. It really, really is insane. And to think about where it came from before with the introduction of Sora for the first time from ChatGPT, where it showed
Mhm.
like the dogs playing in the snow, to where it is now, where you have like, I mean, I think I sent a video with some of the races that people are creating with the Olympics, where it's like the house cleaning race and some ridiculous races all generated using AI. And you would think that is actual people that are performing these things, but it's not. It's just the AI doing it.
And just
And if
to,
you want to
to
go to the
add,
next one, Shiva.
yeah, just to add to that with the dark web, the cloning kits and stuff, you see paid with stolen PII for BEC. When you think that, let's say every month I report that there are about 500 to 600 ransomware attacks where victims don't pay. right? So that the names of the organizations are published on the ransomware group dark web pages. But think about the ones that, yeah, those that get published and the data is out there. So all of this data, 5 to 600 companies per month, right? From this year to last year to the previous year, Fraud GPT and Chat GPT will index all of that information, and that is also what will be used for future attacks inside of there, right? So which leads us to the final slide, which is on the malware automation, right? So AI is doing everything, just like how you could use ChatGPT to build out a whole marketing plan or business plan or something, help you with analytics. It gets even worse on the dark web because it is totally unregulated and unhinged, I guess you could say, right? The polymorphic code, um, the price of it will increase because of the type of features that will be available. And maybe next year, Alex and I could jump back on this webinar to look at where we were at this point in time to where we'll be next year, and probably look back on this and laugh as well and be like, wow, these numbers were so low compared to what we have now. All right, so that GhostNet, you could do a little bit of lookup on that GhostNet toolkit, and it could analyze the traffic as well that's coming out and try to identify, okay, well, you'll allow this type of traffic that goes into your organization. So maybe we should, craft special packets. They allow this type of information, a lot that comes out of the organization. So for exfiltration, they could probably once inside with the polymorphic rootkit and payload is executed, files are not yet encrypted, but they want to exfiltrate the data. AI will help with all of these things. Even the ransomware as a service, they use AI for negotiation now because there is human error. So they will have their own dark web AI agents negotiating now. This is where we've reached. So eventually, entire sites, entire forums, entire markets, the moderators will actually be AI, and they themselves should be able to tell differences between, is this a bot, is this real, is this not, is this, the million things that you wouldn't see. So for example, just to go back to what Alex was saying, based with the romance scams, I know we crossed time a little bit here. But the reason why the romance scams work is that you have a lot of these high-end professionals, managers, CEOs, CFOs, whatever. They don't have the time to really go out and socialize and meet. So they had an article on this that I was reading. Um, I think this my good friend Roland Kisoon shared it, and he was actually talking about this, how you have some people where he knows where they don't socialize, they don't go out, so they are on these apps and they're trying to meet people and socialize and get to know people, just like how you'd meet somebody on Facebook, TikTok, Tinder, something like that, right? But it's a phishing campaign to a whole different level, right? So they say, okay, well, this person here, they look them up on LinkedIn, look them up on these social platforms, whatever, do the AI scraping and say, okay, so this person is single, let me try and connect to this person and form a romantic relationship. And then before they know it, they have some sort of way inside that person's life and organization. So it's compromised from the person and the individuals themselves now, rather from just the technology. But AI is totally automated as well to get these things done. So this is where you have automated cybercrime as a service as well. So I think that's most of it that we have for today. Yep. I hope it was interesting. I hope you all learned a good bit. I'll try to upload this webinar by tonight on the YouTube channel. Just search for CFSI CyberFence and you'll see, I think we're up to episode 50. This will be episode 15 in total. We have 4 more to go. We have 2 next week and 2 the week after. Diwali holiday is on Monday, so Shubh Diwali, Happy Diwali to everyone celebrating out there. Next week, Tuesday, we want to do something with the importance of threat risk assessments. Why threat risk assessments are very, very important, because inside any organization, you will be using suppliers and vendors and using certain software, and you'll find that nowadays the most compromise will come through these third parties, right? Not all, but most. Right, then next week, Friday, I still want to try and get a couple of people from the cybercrime unit to join us for social media and fraud scams. And then finally, we'll end it off the following week with something for the kids and elderly in particular, how you all could go now and help them, right? And pass on some of this knowledge and protect people from some of those scams and stuff as well. And we'll end it off with a panel discussion on protecting the Caribbean critical infrastructure, right? Because of course we are under attack heavily, some countries more than others in the Caribbean. All right, so again, if you're interested in any services from CFSI or Tier 10, just head to the website. You can download the service brochure. And thank you so much for joining us. Alex, you have any comments you want to end off with, buddy?
On the dark and stay
What?
safe.
Oh, yeah.
Don't go on the dark web and stay safe.
Don't go on the dark web. Alex lives by the slogan, he's here for a good time, not a long time, but let's not shorten it in any way whatsoever, right? So, folks,
Necessarily.
thanks for joining. As usual, your certificate should reach within the next hour or two, right? Reach out if you have any questions. So, thanks for joining us. Take care and see you all next week. Bye.